We're kind of moving towards our conclusion here, and what I'll ask each of you is to offer just a brief, succinct policy recommendation, something that could be implemented to address the issue of gun health, as we're now calling it.
So what I would like to see is, maybe this is self-interested, is more data and better analyses. And so I would like to, as one simple policy, is to fund the National Violent Death Reporting System, which is this incredibly good data system, which is not now in all the states, to allow the CDC to ask questions about guns on the behavioral risk factor surveillance system, to allow researchers to get access to concealed carry information and tracing information. There's so much data that either isn't being collected or is not allowed to be given to researchers, which would make a big difference in our understanding of exactly what is happening, so we can pinpoint the kinds of policies that are necessary and they're in a place like the United States where we're going to have lots of guns.
Great. Tony?
I'd like to see the Black Lives Matter movement embrace this issue, not just as a police issue, but as a community issue. And I think the sustaining and widening of that protest movement is important. And I think that the use of deliberative methods of analyzing one's environment and one's circumstances and the policies that surround them are good. Very important for the Black Lives Matter movement. But what I fear is that, like many protest movements, if it doesn't connect itself to the community, if it doesn't adopt strong techniques, that once the police violence issue subsides or the media coverage of it softens, that the protest movement will end in a protest movement, not in a capacity building movement, if you will.
Mike?
So if it's one policy, I would say universal background checks. I think we really have to get that done. But I want to step back and talk about something that David brought up, which is the intensity gap and sort of widening the scope in which we talk about gun violence prevention. And I think one positive development is the involvement of a group called Americans for Responsible Solutions. So if you recall, in 2011, former Congresswoman Gabby Giffords was shot in the head. She's since recovered and has formed this group with her husband, Mark Kelly. And what's really interesting about it is that they're both gun owners. So when we're talking about the conversation, these are people who own guns themselves, who have a respect for guns, use them safely, who are calling for changes to our laws. So the conversation isn't just, well, I hate guns, I didn't grow up with them, I don't understand them, let's take them away. It's, no, I own guns, but I think we need to be more responsible with how we use them. And I think when the conversation is framed that way, it changes things a little bit, because all of a sudden that charge that, well, you don't understand this, so how can you talk about regulating it, goes away. So the participation of that group at the legislative level and more people joining on to create a counterbalance to the NRA, I think is a very important development.
I guess I would echo and support everything that you all said. Ultimately, I think the NRA and groups like it need to be part of the solution. So we can't simply try and have as counteract the NRA, but bring them on board to some kind of a solution. A specific policy is harder for me to identify, although when Tony was just speaking, this child in Cleveland who had a toy gun and was shot down by police officers so quickly came to my mind. It's just a graphic and horrific thing to watch. And I understand the reaction in the Black Lives Matter movement. I also understand the reaction from police officers, because they didn't see a black child, they saw a gun. And I think some of the most interesting and responsible and thoughtful people that you're ever going to find around gun safety and gun health are the first responders. Police chiefs, fire chiefs, people in EMS crews who are out there at the site of these very violent episodes, or to clean up after a suicide. It affects them very deeply, and they have not been part of this conversation nationally and not very effectively locally. So everyone in here knows a police officer or a fire person in the fire department. Reach out to them as well, ask for their perspectives, and we can gradually think about how to move things along in a more positive way.